Welcome to Tech Talks with Kinsoft. So picture this. It's a quiet Sunday afternoon.
Right, the time when absolutely nothing is supposed to be happening in a government office.
Exactly. But suddenly, the New South Wales Treasury's internal security alarms they go off.
Which is never a good sign on a Sunday.
Yeah, oh, definitely not.
Yeah.
But here's the really wild part. The threat they detected, it wasn't coming from like a Russian server farm.
Right.
It wasn't some dark web syndicate trying to brute force a firewall. The call was actually coming from inside the house.
Yeah, the worst kind of call.
Totally. So today we are unpacking this massive cybersecurity incident where a trusted insider, someone who already worked there, almost walked out the front door with over 5,600 highly sensitive government files.
And, we're going to talk about why it took a lightning-fast, like a 24-hour multi-agency strike force to actually stop him.
Because it's a case that really fundamentally rewrites how a lot of organizations need to think about their threat landscape. Traditionally, we think of cybersecurity like a medieval castle, right?
Oh, absolutely. You build the walls as high as possible.
Right, you build high, impenetrable walls.
Yeah.
But this incident isn't about someone breaching the walls. What happens when the threat is just, someone who already has the keys to the castle?
Well, when the attacker already has legitimate credentials, all those external defense mechanisms you've spent, millions of dollars on, they instantly become totally irrelevant.
Which is exactly why we need to talk about this today. Because if you are managing an IT stack or, even just running a business where your employees handle sensitive data, this scenario is your absolute worst nightmare.
Oh. Without a doubt.
So let's look at the facts based on the public statements from the NSW Police and the state's treasurer, Daniel Mookie. We're looking at an incident where a 45-year-old man, an employee, allegedly executed this massive data exfiltration to an external server.
Right. And we should point out he had been with the Treasury for about 3 years.
3 years, so not a newbie.
No, not at all. And that 3-year tenure is a critical detail, This wasn't a new hire making some clumsy mistake during their first week of onboarding.
Yeah, clicking the wrong button or something.
Exactly. This was someone with an established track record, a known entity within the organization. So they had a history, right? A baseline of normal behavior and established relationships with the actual systems they were using every day.
Which makes the whole detection part of this event so fascinating to me. Because the treasurer specifically revealed that this wasn't caught by, the perimeter defenses blocking a hacker.
Right. It wasn't the firewall.
Yeah, it was flagged by what they called internal security monitoring. But I kind of want to push back on the simplicity of that phrase because internal security monitoring sounds like a security guard just watching a CCTV feed,
Yeah, sipping coffee and staring at a screen.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But technologically speaking, if an external firewall is like a bouncer at the front door, is internal monitoring more like a bank vault alarm?
Yeah.
Like it triggers not when someone breaks in, but when a trusted employee tries to carry too much cash out.
That's a really great way to put it, because it is incredibly complex. The traditional security model is essentially, as you said, border control.
Right.
You check the passport at the perimeter, and if the passport is valid, meaning the username and password are correct, the person is just allowed in.
They're in the country.
They're in. But insider threat monitoring operates entirely differently. It doesn't care about your passport. It cares about your behavior once you're inside. It's more like it's like the IRS auditing your spending habits after you already live in the country.
Oh, wow. Okay, yeah.
Right. Like it doesn't care that you're a citizen. It cares that a mid-level manager suddenly bought 3 luxury yachts in cash.
Okay, that makes perfect sense. So the system isn't authenticating identity anymore. It's authenticating behavior.
Precisely. And the technology driving this is typically called User and Entity Behavior Analytics, or UEBA.
UEBA, yeah.
Yeah. And these systems, they spend weeks or even months purely observing. They just watch, and they build a unique behavioral fingerprint for every single user on the network.
So it's basically learning everyone's daily routine.
Exactly. It learns that, say, employee A logs in at 8:30 a.m., typically accesses the HR database, maybe downloads 10 megabytes of PDF files a day, and then logs out at 5:00 p.m. That is their established baseline.
Right. So if employee A suddenly logs in at, 2 a.m. on a Sunday and starts pulling gigabytes of data from a completely different department.
The system sees the yachts.
Right. The system sees the 3 luxury yachts.
Exactly. It flags the anomaly immediately. And in this specific NSW Treasury case, the trigger was the alleged transfer of a substantial cache of documents, around 5,000 5,600 files actually to an external server.
5,600
Yeah.
files. I mean, that's a lot.
It's massive.
Yeah.
Opening 50 files over in an 8-hour shift on a Tuesday, that's normal workflow. But packaging 5,600 files and attempting to route them to some unrecognized external IP address on a Sunday afternoon.
Yeah, that's not normal.
No, it's a critical deviation from the baseline.
Okay, but let me play devil's advocate here for a second, because I can hear IT administrators listening to this, and, they're probably thinking about false positives.
Oh, the bane of every IT admin's existence.
Right. Because if you tune an algorithm to flag anomalies, doesn't the security team just get absolutely buried in alerts every time someone has to, do a massive quarterly report or archive a giant project folder?
Yeah, they do.
So how does the system know this specific external transfer was actually malicious and not just, an employee trying to catch up on work from home over the weekend?
Well, that is the exact friction point of internal monitoring. If the system is tuned to be too sensitive, you get alert fatigue.
Right, the boy who cried wolf.
Exactly, and then the security team just starts ignoring the warnings. But if it is too loose, well, 5,600 files just walk right out the door.
So how do you find that balance?
The way modern systems solve this is through context and risk scoring. It isn't just one single metric that triggers the big alarm. It is the confluence of multiple high-risk indicators happening all at once.
Okay, what kind of indicators are we talking about? Give me an example.
Well, think about the data itself. A robust environment also uses data loss prevention, or DLP, tagging.
Okay.
So every file is basically tagged based on its sensitivity level. The system isn't just saying, hey, this user is moving 5,600 files.
Right, it's more specific.
Much more specific. It's saying this user is moving 5,600 files, and 80% of them contain metadata tagged commercial in confidence.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And it's also saying the destination IP address has absolutely no known association with our authorized government vendors, and this is all happening outside of typical business hours.
I see. So it's the compounding factors that create the conviction. It's the sheer volume, plus the high sensitivity of the tags, plus the weird destination, plus the weird timing.
Exactly. Each of those individual factors adds points to a total risk score. And when that score crosses a certain critical threshold, the alert isn't just a passive log entry that someone might check tomorrow.
It's a flashing red light right now.
It's alarms ringing everywhere.
Well, let's talk about the specific data involved here, actually, because that really explains why this alert was treated with such intense urgency by the government.
Definitely.
This employee, the 45-year-old guy, he wasn't working in just some generic administrative role. He was actually part of the Treasury's commercial team.
Right.
So what does that actually mean in terms of the kind of information he had legitimate access to?
Well, the commercial team within a state treasury, they are the financial engine room for government operations.
Okay.
They do not just manage internal payroll or office supplies. They're intimately involved in the state's commercial relationships and their biggest transactions. We are talking about highly delicate, high-stakes negotiations with the private sector.
So basically the financial blueprints of exactly how the state does business.
Yes, exactly. And Treasurer Mookie emphasized that these files spanned multiple NSW government departments and various, massive projects.
Wrong.
This team handles tender details, huge contract negotiations, complex infrastructure pricing models, and long-term strategic financial plans.
I mean, if you were an outside commercial entity, right, like a private company bidding for $1 billion government contract, knowing the state's internal pricing models and their bottom line leverage, it's basically a cheat code.
Oh, it's incredibly valuable intelligence. It is an absolute goldmine. And honestly, that brings us to the hardest problem in all of information security.
Which is?
The dilemma of authorized access. Because of his specific role on the commercial team, this employee had legitimate, completely required access to these files. He literally needed to open them, read them, and process them just to do his daily job.
I'm just trying to wrap my head around how difficult that makes the IT team's job. Because to the operating system, his login is perfectly valid.
Yep.
His permission levels are completely correct. The computer's just saying, yes, you are authorized to view this tender document.
Exactly.
So the line between an employee diligently doing their job by reading a contract
Yeah.
and an employee stealing the state's financial leverage is just It's paper thin.
It is entirely behavioral. That's the only difference. You cannot use a traditional padlock to stop this because the employee holds the master key to the padlock.
Right.
And this is exactly why the suspected transfer to an external server is the defining action here. The security system doesn't necessarily flag the fact that he accessed the files, it flags the exfiltration.
Moving of the file.
Yes, it notices the digital supply chain suddenly rerouting to some unauthorized, unknown warehouse.
And because this data held the literal financial leverage of the state, an anomaly like that wasn't going to just generate some generic IT ticket to be reviewed over coffee on a Monday morning.
No, absolutely not.
It triggered an immediate crisis, which really explains the sheer velocity of the government's response. Because when you look at the timeline provided in the public statements, it is genuinely staggering.
The timeline is a literal masterclass in incident response. I mean, the internal monitoring system detected the transfer, and the breach was reported to the NSW Police on a Sunday.
And we really need to pause on that for a second. A Sunday.
Yeah.
Usually you think of massive bureaucratic government processes just grinding to a complete halt over the weekend. Like you assume an alert on Sunday afternoon just sits in an email queue until 9:00 a.m. Monday.
Yeah, in a legacy system, sure, but not in a mature security operations center. An alert of this severity involving commercial treasury data triggers an automated escalation immediately. And the response from law enforcement was just as immediate. By Monday, literally the very next day, the NSW Police Cybercrime Squad and a specialized unit called Strike Force Civic were fully operational.
That's crazy fast.
It is. They tracked down and arrested the 45-year-old man right in the middle of Sydney's CBD.
I mean, to go from a system alert on a Sunday to a physical arrest in the city center on Monday is practically unheard of.
It really is.
Because we constantly see headlines about these infamous corporate breaches where attackers just linger inside a network for 6, 8, sometimes 12 months.
Yeah, just dwelling in the network.
Exactly. They quietly siphon off data, and the company only finds out a year later when the FBI knocks on their door, or, worse, when their data pops up for sale on the dark web. So how does a government agency actually achieve a 24-hour turnaround like this?
Well, it proves the absolute necessity of preparation and automation. You do not execute a Sunday to Monday takedown involving the Treasury, the Cybercrime Squad, and a dedicated strike force simply by winging it,
Right, you can't just make it up on the fly.
No. This requires highly sophisticated security orchestration, automation, and response platforms, or SOR platforms.
Okay, SOR. Break that down for us. What does an automated response actually look like in those critical first few minutes after the alarm goes off?
Sure. So when that UB bus system we discussed earlier flags the critical risk score, it doesn't just send an email to an admin. A SO platform will automatically execute a predefined containment playbook.
Okay.
And without waiting for a human analyst to wake up and approve it, the system likely isolated the employee's endpoint right then and there.
So it just cuts them off.
Exactly. It severed the machine's connection to the broader network and the internet, immediately stopping the external transfer in its tracks.
Wow. So it essentially freezes the device in time.
Yes, it quarantines the threat instantly. And then it alerts the on-call security leadership. The fact that the NSW chief cybersecurity officer could immediately step in and coordinate a whole-of-agency response means the connective tissue between the IT department, the agency leadership, and law enforcement was already built.
They had run the drills.
Exactly. They had run the drills. Everyone knew their role the literal second the alarm went off.
And I think the physical law enforcement action is just as crucial as the digital containment here. Because while Strike Force Civic was arresting the suspect in the CBD, police were actually simultaneously executing a search warrant at a home in Homebush West.
Right.
And during that raid, they seized electronic devices.
Right.
And the police statements explicitly noted they seized a hard drive.
And that is the physical manifestation of neutralizing the threat, because in cyberspace, data can be infinitely replicated, right?
Yep, just copy and paste.
Exactly. You can lock down the network all you want, but if the exfiltrated data is already sitting on a hard drive in someone's living room, well, the breach is still active.
Yeah, you can't just delete a server log to hide your tracks when the police physically kick in the door and confiscate your actual storage media.
Precisely. Securing the physical hardware is really the only way to ensure the data doesn't make it to a secondary buyer or get leaked publicly online.
Right.
And following the raid, the man was officially charged with accessing and modifying restricted data held in a computer. He was granted conditional bail, and he was scheduled to appear before the Downing Center local court on June 3.
But The police action is really only half the battle. While Strike Force Civic is handling the suspect and bagging the physical drives, what is actually happening back at the Treasury? Because if I'm a citizen or a private business currently negotiating a big contract with the state, I am terrified about the fallout of this.
Of course. But the government's containment response was incredibly reassuring on that front. First off, police stated they believe all the alleged stolen data was located and is now fully secure.
Which is the best possible outcome.
Absolutely the best outcome. Second, they confirmed there was no external compromise to the agency's systems at all.
Meaning, while all these internal alarms were ringing and chaos was happening inside, no outside opportunistic hackers managed to, slip through the perimeter in the confusion.
Right. The external defenses held strong the entire time. And furthermore, the NSW chief cybersecurity officer executed the containment strictly according to the state's existing cybersecurity plan.
Okay.
And the ultimate result of that highly coordinated effort is that they could confidently announce there was no current impact on any NSW government services. The citizens relying on the state weren't disrupted. The infrastructure didn't falter.
Which really highlights that rapid containment is just as critical as prevention, if not more so.
Definitely.
I mean, you might not be able to stop a trusted employee from deciding to act maliciously on a random Sunday afternoon, but if your systems can detect it instantly, freeze the endpoint, and get police to secure the physical data within 24 hours, you have successfully neutralized the threat before the real damage is realized.
It is a textbook example of organizational resilience because resilience isn't about never having a security incident. That's impossible.
Right.
It is about your organization's ability to absorb the shock, contain the blast radius, and just maintain operations without skipping a single beat.
So, synthesizing everything we talked about today, what are the core technical realities that, every single organization needs to take away from this Treasury incident?
Well, I think there are three primary takeaways here. First, the perimeter is no longer the sole battleground. The people inside your organization, precisely because of their authorized access, pose a massive and highly complex risk.
The call is coming from inside the house.
Exactly. Second, it proves the absolute necessity of contextual behavioral monitoring. Simple rule-based security just fails against insider threats.
Yeah, because they had the right passwords.
Right. You need systems like UEBA and DLP that actually understand what normal workflow looks like so they can immediately flag high-risk deviations based on volume, sensitivity, and destination.
And the third takeaway.
Third, detection is entirely useless without an automated, coordinated response. If you detect a breach on Sunday but you don't act until Monday morning, the data is already gone.
Yeah, you need those automated SR playbooks to freeze the threat instantly and the organizational muscle memory to rely on law enforcement right away. It really forces a complete paradigm shift in how you view data protection.
It really does.
And that actually brings me to a final lingering thought for you, the listener, to ponder on your own. We have spent the last 30 years in the tech industry obsessively focusing on building taller and thicker digital walls to keep the bad guys out.
Yep.
But as those perimeters become more and more impenetrable, the easiest way out is through the people who already hold the keys. So will the entire future frontier of cybersecurity simply become about monitoring the behavior of the people we have already decided to trust?
It is a really challenging reality to confront, but honestly, when the technology is perfectly secure, the human element becomes the primary vulnerability. Trust, but verify, has never been more relevant than it is right now.
It really hasn't. Well, we want to warmly thank you for joining us on this episode of Tech Talks with Kinsoft. We hope this discussion gave you a sharper perspective on the mechanics of insider threats and the reality of modern incident response.
Yeah, understanding the specific tactics and technologies involved is really the crucial first step in evaluating your own defenses.
Absolutely. And if today's conversation has you thinking about the visibility within your own networks, we warmly encourage you to visit www.kinsoft.com.au. Whether you are looking to discuss your personal security architecture or you need to explore comprehensive IT and security solutions for your business to prevent exactly these kinds of blind spots, the team at Kinsoft is ready to help you build that resilience. Thanks again for listening, and we'll catch you on the next one.